Hi, welcome to the video. Today I want to talk about procrastination. It seems to affect everyone. It seems to get in the way and hold you back from achieving your goals and reaching your full potential. Often we can kind of confuse it with laziness and then beat ourselves up when we don't achieve something or don't put the effort in that we know that we should. So this video is going to kind of go into what procrastination is, what causes it, and then I'm going to give 5 tips that I use to minimize procrastination and maximize my productivity and potential. To be honest, it is inevitable that from time to time you just are not in the right place mentally or physically to kind of tackle some big task. You know, if you've been meaning to go on a 10-kilometer run or something, but you've had a particularly difficult day, you know, sometimes you need to push yourself and it takes discipline, but other times it's just things haven't aligned and it's just not possible to do it to your full potential. So, you know, these things creep in from time to time, but for the most part, there's a difference between being genuinely tired, being genuinely unable to do something versus, you know, you coming up with an excuse to do that. And procrastination is basically just that. It's kind of an inner conflict that is against what you want to do in the long term versus what you want to do in the short term. So contrary to common belief, there is a difference between laziness and procrastination. Procrastination is something where you want to do something, but there is something that's preventing you from doing it, whereas laziness is you not wanting to do it in the first place. So I think it's an important distinction to remember, because when you find yourself not doing something that you've intended to do, don't necessarily beat yourself up and say, oh, it's because I'm lazy, it's because I'm demotivated, it's because I'm not capable. Actually, it could be just that with a few little tweaks, you could go from that person who hasn't been able to do that thing to the person who's got into some good habits and does it regularly. So my favorite definition of procrastination is it's your inability to deal with your own limitations. That is what procrastination is. It's not that you are not wanting to do something. It's that maybe there's 5 or 10 different things you need to do, or maybe there's 2 or 3, but those 2 or 3 tasks are extremely time consuming or requires a lot of effort or energy. And ironically, rather than kind of doing what the obvious is, which is just tackle them one by one or just trying to attempt them, instead your body gravitates towards comfort and tries to brush those things aside, you know, clinging on to the idea that, you know, if I don't think about those things and if I distract myself with something else, then I won't have to deal with the fact that maybe I'm not going to be able to do these things to the level that I wanted to do. So as I was implying before, procrastination is basically just a defense mechanism. It's something that you use as a shield to kind of protect your ego and focus on something that doesn't allow you to have to kind of confront your own limitations. So how do you overcome procrastination? Well, the first way is to really hone in on the thing that you're actually trying to achieve in the first place. And to do that, I would say focus on having a strong reason why. Ultimately, if you didn't really want to do something, it's easy to make an excuse as to why you shouldn't do it. But if you're doing it for a very strong reason, and this reason should ideally resonate with your kind of core values. So maybe, for example, health or fitness isn't one of your core values. So going to the gym or pushing yourself to go to the gym is going to require a lot of motivation and discipline because it doesn't adhere to your core values. But if one of your core values was family, for example, then going to the gym so that you're in better shape, so that you can have more energy to spend time with your family, well, that might be something that you can latch onto. So ultimately, there's going to be days where you're not in the right headspace or you're not particularly in the mood to do something. But if you latch onto that really strong reason why you're doing it, it's going to be much easier to kind of push aside those excuses or, you know, maybe I should just sit down or watch TV or play video games and instead do the thing that you want to do, because, you know, if that reason is strong enough, it's much easier and it will require less discipline in the first place. Tip number 2 is to break down the task at hand into smaller, more manageable chunks. Like I said, a lot of what procrastination is you not wanting to face your own limitations. And it's much harder for you to look at a mountain and say, all right, I need to climb that. And you'll be putting that off for a long time. But instead, if you break that mountain down into smaller hills, well, you know, the first stage is to just climb the first one. And that's something that your brain and your kind of psychology is much more wired to be able to pursue, because it's something that you can measure. And that kind of brings me to the point of employ SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym where the S is specific, the M is measurable, the A is attainable, the R is relevant, and the T is time-based. So if you adhere to this template of SMART, you will find that it's much easier to kind of get going in the first place and see things through, because if the tasks that you're trying to manage to achieve are, small and motivating, and you can measure them, and you've put some structure in place, it's much easier to kind of latch onto that, and with that structure you can go from start to finish. Whereas when it's a bit more vague and you're just like, I need to get this big massive thing that's not clearly defined done, it's very easy to kind of distract yourself and not quite realize how easy or difficult it is, and therefore you're going to find an excuse to not even do it in the first place. So tip number 3 is expectation management. And this is something that kind of relates a little bit to the previous point, but ultimately if you can envision the entire journey with the ups and downs included, it's much easier to kind of pursue that journey. Whereas if you imagine the journey to be really difficult the whole way or really easy the whole way, ultimately it's not going to be one or the other, it's going to be a combination of both. So if you can anticipate the setbacks, anticipate the criticism, if that may apply, then you're not going to be as fazed when those things arise. So I think when you expect the unexpected, or if you expect difficulty, or some parts are going to be fun, some parts are going to be challenging, some parts are going to be demotivating, other parts are going to be fulfilling, then when you see that as a whole, it's much easier to latch on to and pursue the journey. So tip number 4 is accountability. So if you have someone that you're accountable to, or a group of people that you're accountable to, you'd be surprised by how much more likely you are to do something. In some ways, we're quite simple creatures that we don't want to disappoint someone, or if there's someone we look up to, we want to impress them. So by making our commitments known, and this could be through vocally, and we can let our family or friends know that I'm going to do this, I'm going to save more money, or I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, or I'm going to pursue this job or this promotion. When you say that you're going to do those things, suddenly it kind of solidifies the process and the commitment internally. So if you make yourself accountable to these people, you'll find that you're going to have a lot more motivation, and it's going to be a lot more sustainable to see yourself through to the end of what you're trying to achieve. So in my case, there's been plenty of times where I wanted to start something, whether that be a side project or something that is going to further my learning, but because it's just me and I'm the only person who's going to do it, it's very easy to you kind of forget about it or brush it aside and say, you know what, nobody needs to know, nobody knows about this, it's fine. At least that's what will happen internally. But by making these things known, by telling your colleagues or your friends that this is what I'm going to do, you'll find that you're much more likely to actually go and do it. So definitely recommend accountability. So the last point is celebrate the wins. There's no point breaking down a task into small manageable pieces if when you actually achieve one of those pieces, or even better, achieve the entire task, then if you don't actually celebrate it, if you don't actually think and be proud of what you've achieved, then it's going to be very hard to motivate yourself to take on something else afterwards. Because ultimately, we do want to feel good and have a reason to do something. And if you went through this really difficult task of, that could have taken days, weeks, months, whatever it may be, and then you get to the very end and you're like, oh, well, move on to the next one, then that next one is going to seem like a massive obstacle because you have to put in a lot to get nothing out of it. So you need to make sure that you get something out of what you're doing and really relish and celebrate that achievement. So definitely celebrate those wins rather than just thinking to the next best thing as soon as you've done it. And that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to continue to make more videos in the kind of productivity, psychology, technology space. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one.